podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Social Media Derby podcast. We have a very special episode for you. We've got a new guest on the show, someone that I've heard a lot about, the man, the myth, the legend. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Lincoln. By the way, wearing a beautiful shirt, I must say.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it was a tribute to you. I've obviously seen you wear it on the show before, and I thought I'd come through and pay tribute to you, straight up. Yes, Lincoln, big fan, big Arsenal fan, as you can see by the shirt. Known Ant for quite a while. We've chatted football quite a lot. I gave him a football book once as a present. I seem to remember that. You remember that one, Ant? It was called Football Hackers. That was one. And so
no, it was the Mixer. It was the Mixer. It was the Mixer was the book that you sent me. Yeah, top class book. It's in my living room. Beautiful book.
Shout outs to that. I work in podcasting myself. I've done a bit of stand up in my time, and just happy to be here, talk about the season as an Arsenal fan and as someone who loves football.
Very, very glad to have you on. It is a pleasure to have another Arsenal supporter on here. I want to try and sway it so that we have as many Arsenal supporters and as few United supporters as possible on this podcast. That's my secret agenda. So it's going to be good. Obviously, all the listeners have heard me and Ant drone on about our feelings towards our clubs for a very long time. The best thing about having a guest on typically is that we can share other viewpoints, other perspectives on our teams. So generally speaking, it's been a very interesting season, both for Arsenal and United. We'll start off with Arsenal. How do you feel like it's gone this season? Do you buy into the whole bottling? What's your take on all of it?
I want to say that this season has been the most fun I've had as an Arsenal fan in like 15 years. I think it's been a great season. We've beaten all of our London rivals. We've eaten in the presence of all of our enemies. Everyone's been terrible. Everyone's had a bad moment. Liverpool, United, Chelsea, Spurs have all had terrible moments. And I think if I take it as that, it's been absolutely amazing. We didn't win the title. I don't think, personally, it's a bottle job, just because this team wasn't built to win the title yet. We're not there yet. A bottle job for me is like Dortmund losing on the last day of the season to an unfan. Like, that's a bottle job when you should be winning. But Arsenal shouldn't have been winning. City won the treble quite easily, actually, if you think about it. And losing to them is not bottling, not in my opinion, at least. And like I said, I had a good time. I had a great time getting carried away. It sucked that we didn't win, but that's not a bottle job. A bottle job is when you're supposed to win and you don't.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, I think I've tried to argue that a couple of times, right? Is that going into the season, there weren't a lot of expectations, and the fact that we came out of it with what we did, I feel like, we've got to give ourselves props for that. I want to quickly get your take, though, because, I mean, me, Anthony, and a couple of other guests have discussed this before. We've had some people on here that really are not big fans of Arteta, despite being Arsenal fans. What's your take on the whole, the Arteta situation? Are you trusting the process?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think, look, let's be real, guys. Let's be honest. If you want Arteta out at some point, I don't think you're a serious man. Either you're not a serious man or you're a liar. You're a liar because we saw the things that we saw. We saw getting beaten like 9-0 in the first 3 games of the season. Your man from Brentford nodding in goals against us had the ACCA on, and he's scoring goals against us. Like, it was terrible. And I was Arteta out. I was this close to hopping on the Northern Line, get balaclava on, and protesting. I was this close, but then the guy turned it around. And now we are where we are. And in a weird way, I actually think Arteta is like our greatest strength, really. Because the guy's learning. The guy's learning all the time. He's not making the same mistakes. I can guarantee you the same mistakes he's been making in the past season, he's not going to make it the next season. And so I actually think that's weirdly become our biggest strength, is that we've got a manager. We've caught a manager at a really good time on the curve, kind of the way the Pochettino was at Spurs, where, you know, everyone's buying in, everyone's feeding in, the team's young, everyone's hungry, they're on their way up. And hopefully Arsenal have the kind of the inclination and the money to actually spend the money to make it work for him, rather than let the team atrophy, which is what happened at Spurs. So in my opinion, that's our greatest strength. And I really hope that they back him fully in the correct way.
I just want to jump in because that's super interesting. I agree with you, man. I think there's a bit of a weirdness in football fandom at the moment where if you change your opinion, then you're a flip-flop, or you're not being genuine, or that proves that you're not like dedicated to your club or something like that. But I feel like if you're manager in or manager out, you've always got new evidence. So at the period where everyone was Arteta out, I mean, you lot were finishing 8th. Like, any Arsenal fan that can accept finishing 8th. Damn, I went on mute. Any fan that can accept finishing 8th a couple of times, you've really got to like look at yourself in a mirror. And if you're not seeing, you know, AFTV Ty looking back at you, then you've got problems. Because other than Ty, there's no one else in the football world that can accept finishing 8th twice in a row. Like,
yes,
you
nonsense.
have to see progress. So,
and
yeah.
To be honest, it's like,
you've got it.
Yeah, it's democracy, isn't it? It's like democracy. If, you know, I might not vote for the prime minister or whoever, but if my life gets better, I'm going to be like, okay, cool, fine, the guy's doing a good job. Like, that's normally how these kind of things work. You have to accept that you don't necessarily know the right way, even if you think you do. But yeah, I'm very much Arteta, exactly. And I'm trusting the process entirely.
Are you Edu in? So one of the things you kind of talked about is like backing him, giving him the money, letting Arteta get the people that he wants to get. Obviously today, the modern game's a little bit different from like the Fergie, Wenger era, where they could pretty much choose, for the most part, who they wanted. And that would be the targets. You know, they had a massive say in who we got. Obviously, modern day football's a bit different. Ant knows about old Woodward. And now we've got old Edu. Are you happy with the, you know, some of the signings that we've brought in last season and some of the transfers that we're going to talk about later?
By and large, I am. And I think you're throwing forward to something that we'll discuss later in terms of some of the players that we're linked with. But I think that's also why I'm kind of willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you'd have told me that Arsenal would bring in Jorginho, and by the end of the season, I'd be like, yeah, it's actually pretty good. It's all right. Yeah, it's all right. It's not bad. That I actually, in fact, if you ask me, if I'm honest about it, I think we should have played Jorginho more towards the end of the season, especially when we were losing control of games and we were 2-0 up already. That's a perfect time to bring on a guy to just keep it tight. I would have said you're mad. So they do have a good eye, and they do seem to be able to get deals done, and they do something that I think is really good. Forgive me, Anthony, but this is one of the biggest problems I think that United has, is that every transfer turns into this huge psychodrama where, oh, it's the guy at the airport. Oh, he's liked a post on Instagram. Like it just turns into this huge thing where it feels like United, even though they just backed away from a deal that isn't good for them, it somehow feels like they've lost in a way, and it becomes way too emotional when it really, really shouldn't be. And one thing I do like about Edu and the team at Arsenal is they've been able to kind of snap away from that. Okay, you don't get Mudryk? Fine. Trossard, good. Okay, you don't get Caicedo? Cool. Let's do Jorginho quickly. We'll get him through the door. That'll do us until the end of the season. And if they can kind of maintain that, I think we'll be in a good spot.
I agree with you, man. 100% actually think like no transfer committee or like, you know, football director and manager or coach or whatever in tandem are ever going to get every single transfer right. But as long as you fill your fans with a bit of like confidence that whatever you do decide to go for, or whoever you do decide to go for, whether it's your top target, if it's, for example, Caicedo or Rice or whatever, if it doesn't work, then you've got an alternative that you feel like will fit the situation, which I think you guys probably had the best January, considering, like, I feel like it's hard to do good transfers in January, and most people make absolute clangers in January. Or if you're lucky and you're, Liverpool, for example, you're bringing in Van Dijk or something that you've been working on for 18 months and it's been a long-term project. But most of the time, you're kind of firefighting a lot in January. And for considering what you guys were trying to do, I feel like it was super logical. And you're right, man. Like, Man U are probably the biggest culprits when it comes to transfers in terms of longing them out. Like, we don't get a quick transfer. You'll never see someone, Romano, say, here we go, and then, the shirt's up, and it will be like within a 2 or 3 week process. Everything, even with like a Jadon Sancho that we worked on for 24 months or whatever, it still would take 7, 8, 9 weeks in the summer, even though it's kind of well known in the industry that he wants to come, because we're basically, we have been, and we still are, probably a laughing stock when it comes to transfers. And I think that's what's really helpful about having someone who's an ex-player, and as someone who's probably got a lot of gravitas, which I think Edu does, right? Like, we've all seen the All or Nothing doc, right? Like, obviously there's a bit of propaganda in there or whatever, but the way you see, kind of like the way he deals with the transfers, obviously they oversimplified it and cut it down to short scenes, but it always looked like kind of it wasn't Arteta that came away looking like he had an aura, it was also Edu. And I contrast that with the Spurs one that we saw a couple seasons ago. And it was Mourinho who looked like he had an aura, and Daniel Levy just looked like some lost professor who was like trying to get involved in people's shit and like ask the players, oh yeah, by the way, Milan haven't come in for you, Danny Rose. Only, Watford and Stoke have. And it just looked like absolute amateur hour. And I think Levy and Woodward have been compared, in terms of like one being a miser, but apparently lauded as a great director, and Woodward as the opposite, one who just throw the cash everywhere, like we're turning up to the strip club and just come up with loads of money and just waste it. But actually, you want the director that I think you guys have. It feels a little bit Barcelona, even what City are right now, kind of vibe. Like, it feels always under control, and I think that's a great thing.
I think you're right, and I actually want to go back to when you asked me earlier, Jonty, how I thought that the season went. I think that is part of the thing that's really curious to me about how Arsenal have operated. They're really kind of dispassionate and clear-headed as an organization. However, the team doesn't necessarily reflect that, if you know what I mean. Like, the actual team at the top, Edu and the other technical directors and what Arteta and his team, really good at not getting swept up in the emotion. But I think part of the reason we actually didn't win the league, is that we got too swept up in emotion. The players did. Fans, you can do whatever you want. You're a fan. It's your right to get carried away. But I think Arsene Wenger used to say something really interesting, that, it's like when you lose, you never get lower than a 3, and when you win, you never get higher than a 7. And I think that's something that the Arsenal team is probably going to need to learn if they want to challenge again. And I think it's good that they already have it organizationally. They just need to figure that out for the team.
No, I think you all make really good points. I guess the last thing I'll say about the kind of transfer strategy. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Arsenal picking up maybe other teams is less popular players, or picking up some scraps from some other teams. I know that Man City fans, if they exist, have definitely said that about picking up Jesus and Zinchenko. It looks like that kind of might happen again, a little bit this season. What's your take on that kind of the general transfer strategy in terms of who we're going for? Because obviously it does look like Arteta's getting what he wants. Are you happy with what he wants at all times there?
No, I'd be lying if I say that's true. Because I know we've been linked with Gundogan as well, which would be a great player, but it feels like it's not quite in step with what they've been doing before, which is to build this kind of really exciting young core of players that then have some sort of sell-on value. In terms of the transfer strategy, what I'm not particularly happy with, or I'm not happy with, but I'm fine with it, but I'm like, this is curious, is I don't understand how we're spending all of this money and we're not selling anyone. I don't understand where this money is coming from. Just like, unless we have like just like the best accountants in the game, like the PSG accountants, just the guys that just make the books work.
That Super Bowl money.
Ooh.
It's that Super Bowl money. Kroenke's getting that Super Bowl money out here.
Yeah,
mate.
but you know, Kroenke, someone's got to put that stuff in a spreadsheet, and it's got a balance and all sorts of stuff, and we just seem to be able to do it, which I'm amazed by. Unless that's actually what Arteta actually brought from City, is a little bit of that spice, a little creativity. But yeah, that's something I find is going to be really interesting, because traditionally Arsenal has sold really poorly, and I don't think long term, which I think this project is, you're going to be able to just keep buying, just keep spending 200, 300 mil across 3-4 transfer windows and not actually sell anyone. And luckily, this is another good thing that they've done. They've put the squad together so well that you can, maybe Tierney's probably going to go. You'll probably get some money for Balogun if you don't fancy him. So there are saleable assets. But yeah, I don't agree with everything. I'm not really sure about buying 33-year-old City players. It seems a bit short-termist. I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, speaking of poor signings, I think let's get on a little, like just a short amount of time to talk about old Anthony's favourite team signings. As an Arsenal fan, trying not to be too biased against that terrible team. How do you think their season's gone this season? Like, Ten Hag, what's your thoughts on that? They're screaming about maybe having a better season than us and all that. What's your take on Man United this season?
Man, it's been really interesting. That first United Arsenal game was really important, I think, because I've said for the longest time what I just always wanted for the Arsenal. I just want us to be in the mix again. I just want us to be like in big occasions that people watch, that people who aren't Arsenal fans, they pay attention and they care about it. And that, I feel like that United game was the first time that I thought, okay, something's happening here. Like this game matters. This is an informed team against the number one team in the country. I think they're probably on schedule for where they should be. I think they're probably maybe a year behind Arsenal, a year and a half behind Arsenal. I think that's probably fair, given that Ten Hag came in so long ago, or not that long ago, I should say. I said this from the beginning, and I've said this to Ant when we've been talking before, that midfield is an issue. Casemiro is good, but he's not at Madrid anymore. He's not getting the benefit of the doubt fouls. My man's getting sent off because he's floating, and it's Fred and McTominay, and it's not good. And Eriksen, God bless him, but as Ant said before, my man's got half a heart. You got Lisandro Martinez back there, great player. I didn't think he was going to do it. His teeny tiny little legs. I thought, but man, honestly though, but the way people talked about Martinez, you would have thought that like this is the smallest man to ever live. Like like in I always reference this, but in Space Jam, when those guys lose their powers and they're just like, and they're in the clothes of the monsters, but they're just little aliens. That's how people were talking about Martinez.
Yeah, they were talking about him like he was buying from the children's section, right? Children's boots, size 5s out here.
I thought it was so disrespectful. No lies, I was in there. I was like, man, this is the shortest man to ever live. But he's great. He needs some backup though. I think they have to make a lot of changes. I think obviously striker, midfield, need a new keeper, need a new centre back. And I think it's very difficult actually to say because they have such a hard time getting deals over the line. But I think they've had as good a season. I think the table position is reflective of what kind of season they've had. I think it's a fair. I don't think they've over or underperformed. I think they've done exactly what United should be doing.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Because I think, I don't know. I'd say I'll probably lean slightly towards. I think we've slightly overachieved in our league position, considering how bad we were last season. I think that's what a lot of United fans were looking at. So I think a lot of United fans were prepared for a season with more pain than we actually ended up enduring. I think what we ended up getting was a couple of really sharp stabs of pain. Like the Liverpool 7-0, obviously that was that was a sharp stab that really hurt. The 6-3 to City, obviously the cup final loss, the last minute loss to you guys at the Emirates, which I really enjoyed that game, even if still we lost it. I felt like I came out away from that game quite proud because most of the time I expect us to go and sit back away and actually feel like we were one of the few teams that came to the Emirates and gave it a go for like 60 minutes. And then you could clearly see we didn't have legs and everyone started to retreat. And then you guys just like pummeled us to death in the end and got the last minute goal. But like, I think there were some low points, but I think we were prepared as a fan base for worse, considering how we were last season. So I think if you look at the name United, coming third is not like, it shouldn't be something where you say we've done well or we've overachieved. But I think looking at where we realistically were, to get third, win a trophy and get in the final, win another one, and then also do not too shabbily in the Europa League, then I think we've probably slightly overachieved. And I think you're right. I think we're still probably a year or so behind Arsenal. But I would say is we've got the huge benefit if we've been able to accelerate our process a lot quicker than you have. Like we've had Ten Hag for 1 year, but we're able to drop 250 mil in his first summer. And Arteta never got that. He gets half of that spread out, and then he gets the other half the next season, and he has to get rid of Aubameyang and blah, 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 and all these different guys without contracts running out. Ten Hag had the benefit. Pogba's contract ran out. He left. A few other big players' contracts ran out. They left. The only thing he's really had that was probably the biggest struggle was the Ronaldo thing, which feels like that was like 5 years ago, but that was this season. So that was the biggest one. And then I guess this summer's big drama is going to be around Maguire, whether or not we can get him out. And last week we talked about, I was crossing all my fingers and toes that Spurs take him, because if we can get rid of Maguire, I see that as our biggest transfer hurdle to get over. Like we'll long out every single purchase that we have. That's a given, right? What you said is true. So I don't think any of us are expecting that to change, but we have the similar track record, I think, to Arsenal when it comes to we sell poorly.
Yeah.
We stink when it comes to selling players. Yeah. I'll be really honest. We get no transfer fee, or we get, I think we sold 1 year, we sold Chicharito for like 6 million, Van Persie for 3 million, and Johnny Evans for 1.5. And I look at those three players and I think there's no way you can get under 10 million for those three players, but we did it.
It's
and
really
we could
difficult.
have used them all.
It's really difficult. That's one thing that Edu said as well. I think this is when he was a little bit more open with fans I think it's in the off season last season. Is that it's so difficult when you've got players on high wages, and they're kind of in their late 20s. You basically have to pay them to go away, which is what Arsenal had to do with Ozil, with Kolasinac. Willian actually ended his contract voluntarily, although I'm like, that should be investigated, because I've never heard of that in my man ended his contract voluntarily. What's going on here? That there's loads of it's very difficult for United to sell, and traditionally they're not a really good selling club. In the same way, in a different way, I think, to Arsenal, the United way kind of more reminds me of Real Madrid in a way. It's just like this is the final level where you're supposed to go after this. And that's something that's faded in recent times, but the club is not set up in order to adjust to that, in order to sell those players. So yeah, I think, like you said, and also United's money, I think the kind of floor is always a lot higher. Arsenal have a bad season, it's 8th, but United can just spend a little bit and get into 3rd. So it's always good for you guys in that way. Which of course makes it so funny when it doesn't go right. So I gotta respect that.
Yeah, and long may that continue. I think we'll get on to the next point. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, right? That maybe Man United's their 3rd place finish was a little bit flattering to them throughout the season. One thing I want to get into is obviously the fixture lists they've now been kind of leaked or confirmed now for both of our teams. And I remember one of the big things that happened last season, and me and Ant had this discussion offline many times, was that, after a certain number of games, maybe it was 10, 15, 20 games, Arsenal were in a great position and everyone was like, doing really well. Fans were getting a little bit ahead of themselves. But I remember, Ant, at all times, you'd always say, you've had a pretty easy first run of games. You haven't had it too hard. You've probably had part of maybe the easiest run up out of all of the top 5-6 teams. So I think with this season, obviously, we'll put it up on the screen here. I want to go through Arsenal's kind of fixture list for this season. And let's see if we can, go through some of these games and see if there's any areas where we think we might struggle, any areas where we think, we can do well. What do we think this means for the Arsenal team going forward? So we'll put that up on the screen now. But maybe, Ant, do you want to start? What do you think of the Arsenal fixture list right now?
Yeah, I mean, Lincoln made a great point off camera about, obviously, big chunks of this fixture list are probably going to move around because of congestion and pile up and stuff that will happen once you've got the other competitions going, like the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup gets started in early January. Europe, obviously, both of us will be in Champions League, so I imagine quite a few fixtures will get moved around quite a lot. But I think you've got a nice first month. You're home to Forest, away to Palace, and home to Fulham. Like, I've got to be honest. I would, without what you've done last season, I would look at even a kind of more modest Arsenal that isn't kind of on the form you guys have been in the past season, and say you should get 9 points out of that. I mean, Forest, God knows what that team will look like. Like, those guys do about 1 million transfers every single window, so I don't know what they'll look like. So I think you guys should deal with them, and I think starting at home is a great way to kick off the season. I guess Palace away has always been traditionally a bit of a difficult game, but I think you guys kicked off at Palace away last season, didn't you? And you kind of handled them quite comfortably. So I would expect similar. And I think Fulham, you know what? Yeah, this is going to be my early shout. I think Fulham are going to struggle next season, because I think this season they've been really, really good. But I feel like if any club that came up last season are going to really struggle with second season syndrome stuff, I think it could be Fulham. Because low key at the back end of that season, last season, they weren't flowing like they were kind of earlier on in the season. And I don't know, something about Marco Silva. I feel like he's a decent coach, but I feel like he's got like an expiry date at each club that he's at. Like, he generally starts off quite well with them, and then it kind of goes a bit left. So I would expect you guys to batter Fulham at home. And then, I mean, September's when things start to get a bit sticky. You've got United at home, Everton away, which I won't mention what happened at Everton away this last season. Tottenham at home, which, I know Tottenham are a joke. And if they do have a back line of Lloris, Maguire, Dyer and Longley, you're slapping them. But if they don't, that could always be a bit of a tough one. And Bournemouth away. So, I mean, I expect you guys to go on a similar run, man. I can't lie. I expect, if you're not sitting on, how many games is that? 7 games. If you're not sitting on, 18 points minimum from that, like, I would expect probably the hardest game in that run's maybe us at home, maybe Everton away. But even then, I wouldn't be surprised if you beat Everton away or, easily dispatched of us at home. You've got a great record against us at the Emirates now. So I would expect something similar. I don't know. What do you think, Lincoln?
Yeah, the Everton away one is interesting. I think the Everton away one is one that I think I'd actually fancy Arsenal for, because Everton, they don't really turn up until it gets to, like, February, March, and it's dire, and it's like the club's on fire again. So you can catch, if you can catch Everton at a toxic moment, if you can catch them at the toxic moment, you can really turn Goodison Park into an unpleasant place to be. The United one definitely looks like a difficult one. I'm curious about Fulham, that you think Fulham, because I actually, in my head, Fulham kind of did enough to be safe, and then they lost Mitro for the last couple of games of the season, and I think they kind of lost a lot of their threat, and they didn't look as sharp going forward. And when you're a team in that kind of part of the table, you only really need one outstanding player to overachieve and be safe. And when they lost their outstanding player, they started to look a bit wonky. That looks like a great fixture list. And on paper, we should be fine, and that worries me deeply, because I don't know what kind of Arsenal will turn up. They've now had this kind of, they've sailed too close to the sun. Are they able to then pick themselves up the next season and actually go on a good run of games? I think the other thing on top of that to remember is there's no Winter World Cup this year. And when you play teams as there's the one thing that's good about the fixture list. I think if we played City before the break when they were wobbling, I think you can put down a marker and win. But then the way that the fixture list shakes out, when you play them later, it's a little bit different. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think we play City relatively late in the run, which is, I mean, it could be good, could be bad. No one knows at this point.
No,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think, like Lincoln said, I think it's a pretty nice general fixture list, right? Like the thing I'm always watching out for is whenever we got like back-to-back games or like in a short space of time playing really, really good teams, right? Because generally speaking, when Arsenal do well, we tend to go on long runs, right? We do something like last season, for example, we were really, really good at going on long runs and, pretty much going unbeaten, smashing teams, just like turning everyone over. And obviously having a relatively easy fixture list allows for that a little bit more. But as soon as it kind of gets close to like crunch time, you start seeing us get battered. You start seeing heads go down. And that's when that young squad, the squad that hasn't got a ton of experience, starts to lose their bottle a little bit, maybe start to lose their belief a little bit. So I think it is a nice run of games, but I'm going to hold out. I mean, even if we go first 7 games unbeaten or batter everyone and end up after the first 7 games with 21 points, that City game is what I'm looking for. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't want us going backwards. So, if we come out of Man United even at home and we haven't beaten you lot, there's going to be a little bit of disappointment there. So I'm really watching for October 7th, mate. When we're playing City at home, I want to see a marked difference from what happened last season. Obviously, City are a machine full of robots and they've just done the treble now. But hopefully my whole narrative that we were talking about in one of our previous episodes, that now Pep will just kind of be a bit lazier and just kind of, put his hoodies back on, start relaxing a little bit. I'm hoping that will happen. So I'm hoping we can get a good result off of that first one. But I'm going to try and reserve all judgment of our play and of our team until we start playing City. Newcastle away is not an easy one. That whole December run of fixtures, we've got to play Liverpool. Obviously it didn't work out too well last time when we were at Anfield. So that's where the big ones where I'm going to be watching and seeing if there's like any kind of improvement off of last year. But I think, again, I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to talk too much, but that's a fixture list that you could win the title with, if that makes sense, right? It's not, you're not having, and don't start doing all that shit. And if there's any time we can win it, this looks like a decent fixture list, right? We haven't got everything playing against us, so I mean, I'm not putting any pressure on our team, but this is a generous fixture list for the Arsenal team.
No pressure on, but it looks like a title-winning fixture list. You madman. One thing I will say though is look at your last 5 away games. They're not the easiest. Like when things are about to get sticky, or get to squeaky bum time, like Sir Al used to say. Your last 5 away games, spanning March to May, is away at City, which will be a week after you play Chelsea at home. Which Chelsea past season have been dog. But next season with Pochettino, they might be a bit harder. You've got City away, Brighton away, Wolves away, Tottenham away, and United away. Those are your last 5 away games. So what I will say is you guys will need to have a similar away record than you had this season to be able to cope with the last 5 away games being, those are pretty hard. But obviously I'm going off Brighton this season. If the level drops, which is highly possible, right? Like as much as I'm feeling De Zerbi, I don't know, can they keep it up once they've lost Caicedo, McAllister, and maybe some other players from their team? That might not be as difficult as it has been, but still, away at City, away at Brighton, Wolves, Tottenham, and United, that's not the easiest fixture list. But I will agree, in the kind of pressure fixture pile-up areas of the season, you've got nice fixtures. I reckon you've got a good chance if you can build up some momentum to have another really good season.
I think that second to last game, United away, looks really tasty. I think that looks like a really like if anything is on the line, whether it's top 4, whether it's the actual title between those two teams, I think that's a real crunch fixture, and one of those fixtures that you definitely look forward to. And what I was talking about before, just like in the mix, things on the line. You're still playing in April, you're still playing in May for stuff. So that's when I would definitely look out for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a Man United Arsenal game is always a tasty affair, even when nothing's on the line. But if there's any meaning to that last, Man United Arsenal game, especially if it's at Old Trafford as well, that's going to be a tasty game. And I mean, speaking of United, I'm looking through your fixture list now, and again, we'll put it on screen. But you look like you've got a decent fixture list as well. To be perfectly honest with you, again, like here's the weird one: is Chelsea kind of like previous years? I would see them in here like back to back against Chelsea and then Liverpool. But based off of what they would look like, last season, and the fact that they're going to have a new manager in and they've got Todd Bowley there, when I see Chelsea in the fixture list, it means nothing to me anymore. It's like you may as well be playing Crystal Palace. So, generally speaking, it looks like your December's going to be a little tough. But I think other than that, Man United have got a pretty decent fixture list too. Wouldn't you agree, Ant?
Yeah, on first glance, I don't think it's terrible, but I do think our August and September, we might have a slightly harder, kind of kick-off list of transfers. We've got Spurs away is our first away game. And you never know, Big Angie might have riled them up. If they've still got Kane, then, they've got a chance. Arsenal is our next away game after that. So obviously, I'm not expecting us to get anything from that game. I've gone into that game with chest way too many times and come away with pigeon chest afterwards because we've been humbled. So even when Arsenal have been and in 8th, you've probably still beaten us most times at the Emirates. So, gone are the days of Jesse Lingard moonwalking at the Emirates. That, I wish I could still roll that out now, but he doesn't even have a team anymore. So, that's how long ago that was. So I don't know, man. I think our fixture list, I think it ends slightly softer than yours does, but it starts slightly harder than yours does. So my only thing is, depending on how the transfers go in the summer, if we have a bad start, how our fans can get just as toxic as Arsenal fans. It's not, this Glazers out thing is the one consistent thing that all United fans agree on. But the manager in and out stuff, I wouldn't be Ten Hag out or anywhere close to it if we had a bit of a sticky start, considering we had a sticky start this season. But I think if we don't start well off the back of not having a good transfer window and the ownership stuff hasn't gone the way we want it to be, I can see things kind of building up a bit of negative energy at the beginning of the season if we don't get some good results. But I'm like Lincoln said, but obviously, if we can stay in the mix, get top 4 again, show progress, maybe cut out the 7-0 humblings and stuff like that, then I think we will have had another good season. If we could win another trophy, that would be great too. Obviously, one that's slightly more prestigious than the Carabao Cup, because all I've heard over this couple of weeks since the season's ended about comparing seasons is, Carabao Cup's a piece of shit. No one cares about that trophy. Blah 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 blah. I was looking to try and buy Carabao. I was trying to find it in all my local shops. I can't find it anywhere. I've had to go on Amazon and try and find a crate of that stuff. But it would be great if we won an FA Cup or we progressed deep in the Champions League and had another positive season. Which, to be honest, looking at that fixture list, like you guys have said, I don't think we're at that level to really put a proper title charge in or go for it. But I think we can get top 4 again, hopefully comfortably, and hopefully win another trophy. But yeah, it's really dependent on the transfer window. What do you think, Links? What do you think about it?
About United, about Arsenal's season as it looks like this?
No, the United fixtures.
They look pretty solid. I think the first couple of ones, like you said, they start a little bit harder. I think that Spurs game is interesting. I think playing Spurs quite early on It's going to be tough. You just never know. And then I think Arsenal, Brighton back to back. That's a tough one. You can get a lot of negative momentum there. So from the way that it looks, I think, yeah, like I'd have to agree with that assessment. Starts a little bit harder, but ends slightly better. I think definitely for United, one of the things they'll have to cut out is you just got to cut out these big kind of just like things, just big humblings, because it's so difficult to pick up and get momentum back again after you've been beaten 7-0 and had 6 against you and 4 and stuff like that. That's the other thing. You just have to like cut that out. But if they can cut that out, then yeah, I don't see why they couldn't have a decent run, especially with that run of fixtures that starts pretty good.
No, man, I can't agree with you more, because I feel like, but there's this alternative viewpoint on, well, I guess it's not really a viewpoint. It's a lot of excuse making where people go, oh, we had X amount of fixtures in a certain run. That Liverpool one came flush after having X amount of other games against Barcelona and all these different things in a short space of time. But I don't agree with that thinking, though, because we've had way too many. All right, 7-0s, we haven't had loads. That's probably the worst result I've ever seen Man United have.
Yeah, no one's had loads of those, mate.
Exactly. Well, you've had 8 too, so you guys are in the boat with me. But
difference is 7 goals.
But that's a monstrous result. When you get above 5, that's a monstrous result. The problem is we've had a 6, and 6-3 looks better, but we know what that was really going on there. Like we got a couple of garbage time. Anthony Martial turns up and shows Man City a thing or two, but really we were getting slapped in that match, and they stopped playing basically after they hit 6. Let's be real, they pulled back a little bit. They didn't go for Liverpool to truly put the knife in. But we've had, like Lincoln said, we've had way too many 4s. I think Brentford have done us by 4 a couple of times. Brighton have done us by 4 at least once. It's one thing to get slapped by Liverpool and City. It's one thing to get slapped by a rival. It hurts more, but there's some logic behind it. They should be a good team. Getting slapped by Brentford and Brighton, I know those teams have performed well this season, but there's no world where United, Arsenal, the big 6 teams should get slapped by Brentford and Brighton. You might lose 1-0, you might lose 2-1, you might have a stinker and get beaten by them, but to get pummeled is not acceptable, and we've had way too many of those. So I don't buy into this fixture pile-up thing, because we've just got too much previous with getting slapped up by teams. We need to. It's a mentality thing, and that's why I do think some of these yellow-bellied guys that we have in the team need to go, and more of the dogs and the houses like the Lisandro Martinez, the Casemiros, the Antonys, as much as you hate him, get those kind of characters come in. And I don't think you will see 7-0, 6-0, or happen. I hope, but I still think we've got, as much as I like players like Luke Shaw, I can't say that for Maguire and McTominay. But when you have those kind of characters in your team, I think you will get slapped like that, because I think they don't know how to right the ship when it's going wrong, and I think they'll drag down the good players with them. So hopefully, saying goodbye to some of those guys will help correct the kind of the cultural issue at the team, and we won't see that. But this might be famous last words, and we may get slapped 6-0 at Spurs. Who knows?
I mean, yeah, that's definitely a very interesting point. I think a lot of the thing is that we're guessing a lot here, right? Because we're talking about like playing Brighton, we're playing all these teams. We have no idea what their squad's going to look like next season, and we don't really have a full idea what our squad is going to look like. Like you said with De Zerbi, right? If they lose all their best players, I know there's like the heat's kind of died down on some of their players right now, but if they lose some of their key players, obviously that might not be as hard a game next season as it was this season, right? So I definitely think it's going to be a lot based off of what happens in the transfer market. And then for our two teams, I definitely think there's going to be a lot of effect, particularly for Arsenal, I think, of playing in the Champions League and seeing how we can deal with squad depth when we have to play that kind of competition. Because, I mean, I've watched, I went to the Sporting at home game, and we weren't putting out, it didn't look like we were always going for it quite as much. It didn't seem like there was that much hype around it. I feel like with the Champions League, though, it's going to be a different story. It's going to be our first time back in the Champions League for a while. We're going to want to put on a good showing. And I think that lends itself to the league being a little bit less important. I know managers all say everything's important and that, but I think we'll see maybe some struggles from both of our teams playing in the Champions League as well. And I think obviously, yeah, you guys played in Europe last season as well, but it will very much depend on the transfers. And I think that's a natural segue to talk about some of the transfer rumors that we've heard. I know everything's coming out these days. I don't know what, like, based off of last week's discussion to this week's discussion, a lot of things have happened. So I think we'll start with, with Arsenal. Obviously, it looks like things are going well with Rice. We had our first bid rejected, as you'd expect. I don't know what we were trying to do. Maybe trying to see if there's a release clause in there or something. I don't know what we were doing going in with 80 million, but it looks like and it feels like, like Lincoln said, we're going to get that over the line. So that's good news for us. It looks like maybe some interest on Caicedo's died down a little bit. But the big one to talk about is Kai Havertz. We've been talking about picking up crap from other teams. Maybe people here don't think he's crap, but Lincoln, what's your take on the whole being linked with Kai Havertz? Do you think it's a serious rumor? If it is, what's your take on that?
I think it is serious, my guy, and I think it's time we start taking it seriously. This guy, first of all, I'll say this: this guy's a bum. This guy is a bum. This guy's one of the most depressing players in the world. My man, he's really into donkeys for some reason. My man is always on like the whole charity donkey appeal, whatever. My dad, you look like a donkey. All right? Get out of here. You're a bum. Okay? This guy is football's J. Cole. Puts me to sleep. This guy is terrible. However, if Arteta can see in this guy, this bum, that this guy might actually contribute in a way, sure. Fine. I'll hold up my hands. I'll come back on here if he next season he rips up the place, wins the Ballon d'Or. I'll be the first. I'll come up on here and I'll commit ritual suicide. Like I'll kill myself on the podcast. I'll do it. But this guy, I do not see it. I've been looking at his stats. It doesn't make a lot of sense. He is really good in certain percentiles. He's really good in certain percentiles in terms of like pass progression and like receiving and stuff. But if you ask me what Arsenal's actually lacking in its forward line, it would not be another forward who has really good movement in and around the box and can nip in with a couple of goals a season, 8, 9, 10 goals a season. That's clearly not what Arsenal's lacking in that part of the pitch. So I don't see what you use. If you play him in the middle, because what people say, oh, he's really tall, he's got good height. If you play him in the middle, he's terrible aerially. He doesn't actually win any aerial duels. If you play him on the side, he's really good aerially because he's competing against fullbacks. However, that's not how Arsenal play. Arsenal don't play that way. So I don't really understand what the goal is here, dude. I'll stop right there. Maybe Anthony, maybe you can explain. Maybe you have an idea about what these people are seeing.
No, man. I have probably less passionate feelings about it in terms of thinking he's a bum, but I do think he's rubbish, and I don't really get why. It doesn't make sense. Like, this is one where you really have to be committed, to Arteta to see or believe and trust in it, because I don't, and the fee and everything like that, it baffles me. It seems like, when you guys went and got David Luiz and Willian, and it was like chump change. It felt like you guys just found some money in the back of the couch, and you just were like, all right, we need to get a couple of players. Let's get some oldies. Let's get them in for the experience. That made a bit more sense. This one doesn't make any sense because, like you said, he's versatile and he can play in lots of different positions, but I don't know if he's good in any of them. And the only time I've seen Havertz perform really, really well, I'm going to have to go digging in the vault and see him when he was playing at Leverkusen, because I can't remember him having at least one season at Chelsea where he had a proper impact on their team and he was putting up numbers or playing really, really well. I can think of individual isolated games where I feel like he's played quite well. Obviously, one big one, Champions League final. But even in a lot of those games, he's always been really wasteful. And I don't think you need another wasteful player, because as much as I love and I rate Jesus as a football player, and I think he does great things for your system, I don't necessarily think Havertz is in that conversation. He's wasteful, but I don't know if he can hold the ball up as well as Jesus. I don't know if he'll bring and allow Saka and Martinelli to create, space for them to run in behind. I actually see him as, like Lincoln, you've just said, he goes searching for space and he moves into space, which is good, I guess, but I just don't see that as something that's high up on the priority list for you guys to try and get, unless you're looking to. The only thing I'm trying to think left field, because Arteta and Pep like, a little bit football wacky genius type guys. Maybe he's going to drop him deeper and play him in the Xhaka role. I don't know, but that seems wild to me. I don't know.
That seems wild. He's never performed there ever. I don't think that would be a good idea at all. I think that personally, that spot is kind of reserved for Emil Smith Rowe and or Rice or whoever comes in. I think that kind of second 8 role is his. But I actually, in an attempt to kind of try and make sense of this transfer, I had a bit of a look on FBref, just the kind of players that he's similar to, like statistically, his profile, and it's the number 1 player is Danny Welbeck. And I was like, dude, what are we doing? We got Welbs back? Come on, man. As soon as I saw that name, my heart sank. Because I remember when Welbs was playing for the Arsenal and people were trying to gas me up like this guy was actually good. Like that guy could actually contribute. There's a lot of this, actually, no, there's a lot of that with players like him. And I don't want to take on more Chelsea baggage. I don't want to make it easier for them to get rid of these players. As an Arsenal fan, Jonty, I don't know about you, how you feel, but I feel like this is a wild deal.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Like when I saw the rumor at the beginning, I was thinking this got to be a joke. Like this is just one of the rumor mill type things that's going around. There's got to be no credence to it, like at all. Then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I was trying to make sense of it and think, yeah, maybe this can work out well. Because obviously, I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to think, yeah, okay, if this ends up happening, I can't put my foot in it too much and be like, oh, this is, there's no way this can work. But to me, I have like a theory that he's trying to do what Pep did last season, and he's just building up a bunch of attackers that aren't strikers to just play alongside each other and to just swarm the opposite half. And it feels to me like he's doing like Pep 1.0 settings where he's hasn't yet realized that he needs a proper striker to be able to play in, and get goals for us in like sticky times instead of having to work everything through all the time. And it feels to me like, yeah, he bought Jesus, who's not an out-and-out striker. He bought Trossard again, not an out-and-out striker. He's already got Martinelli and Saka. Nketiah is probably the only out-and-out striker that we've got. And even then, he's not like a big target man or anything else like that. So I'm really thinking, is he just like one step behind Pep and that he's just trying to do this? We don't need to play a striker type football. And that worries me most because, Pep does the same thing where he just goes and buys like other people's crap and turns it into gold, right? Like he's gone and bought, or he's going to get Kovacic this season, right? Who I know is one of Chelsea's better players, but it's Chelsea. He's buying it from, a bottom of the table type team. So I feel like he's trying to do that. He's trying to, get some good that other people can't see and stuff like that. And I get that whole idea. And if it works out well, great. But so far, I don't know if I've seen that from him. I don't know if I've seen him pick up crap players and turn them into something great. I know like Xhaka's redemption arc, sure, but he didn't pick him up. He had him the whole time. I don't know how many players we've picked up that have been like everyone else is like, don't want any more type thing. Maybe Tomiyasu. I don't know, but Ramsdale, it worries me when I see him do... Yeah, maybe Ramsdale as well. I can kind of see the vision there with the way that Ramsdale plays, though. So I was kind of like, maybe that was the way that he was thinking. But with Havertz, I don't understand the way that he plays and how it's going to work in our football. I don't understand how it makes our first team better. I don't even know if it does it make our squad depth better. We're already pretty deep in that type of role. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what is the actual benefit? And if he's going to go and spend that money, the opportunity cost of, like, why wouldn't you spend that money to get, and put it with some other money and go and get Caicedo, or, do something that's actually going to improve our starting 11 or significantly improve our squad depth. And that's where I'm a bit confused. And that's where it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But there was another rumor that came out with Lavia. Did you guys see the Lavia rumor? Getting like Romeo from Southampton. That I can see that maybe, but
the Lavia one makes sense from what it seems like. It seems like your Caicedo interest is cooled. I don't know why, by the way, right? I still think he's quality, but it seems like the Caicedo interest is cooled. You've turned to Decky Rice. And then now you still want to get someone younger, I guess, who can also fill in. Because I don't know what's going on, man. It looks like you're doing a full midfield revamp. Because you've obviously got Xhaka, rumours of Xhaka basically done deal out. I saw all these rumours about Partey maybe leaving as well. So if you lose both of them, and then you get in Decky Rice, Lavia, and Havertz, and we assume in Havertz, by the way, is going to form some form of midfield presence, whether it's in a 10 or, or whatever. That's a big midfield change, and I appreciate that Xhaka maybe had to leave. He was, his contract's running down, but to lose Xhaka and Partey in one summer and then kind of basically revamp the whole midfield minus Odegaard, it's a ballsy move, if that is true.
I haven't seen anything about Partey, so I can't say anything about that. But what I will give credit to Arteta to is one of the things that Pep is really, really good at is Pep is really good at solving problems kind of before they happen. And that comes across as tinkering, like as him just like, losing the plot. But he's seeing, and this is the way that the Premier League works. You have 10 games, there's an international break, teams start to figure you out, oh, you're not that good at the back post, etc. I'm going to hope that this is what Arteta is seeing. Arteta he sees the kind of quality of the squad. He's foreseeing teams going to play a certain way against Arsenal going forward. And Havertz is basically someone who's solving a problem that doesn't exist yet, but will exist in 10, 15 games time. But I agree with both of you. I just don't see it. And like you said, John, to the opportunity cost of potentially losing out on Caicedo, when you know that you're almost more than likely going to lose Xhaka, and from the sounds of it, you look like you might lose Partey. It's a very weird move.
Yeah, especially if Chelsea are the ones that end up getting Caicedo as well. So we've taken their crap that they don't want and let them get the player that we do want. It doesn't make any sense to me. We've always been strategically, in terms of transfers, letting other teams kind of screw us in the league. Let's be honest, right? We picked up like bloody Sylvester and Welbeck from you lot, funding you to go and get whoever else you want. David Luiz, all these dons. I mean, even I thought that first off when we got Jorginho. I feel like, why are we picking up these man seconds? They don't want him, so why? What do we want with Jorginho? Obviously, I can take that one back a little bit because it does look like he's bringing something different to our team, but I really don't understand it. And this is where I'm, I like Arteta, I like the process, I like the idea that we build up our young players, but the transfer strategy has always been strange to me, and that's not exclusive to him. I mean, even back Arsene Wenger days, at the back end of his reign at Arsenal, I was wondering a lot with some of the players that he was signing. And it still feels like, to me, until I see otherwise, we haven't quite figured out what we properly want, or we just don't have the sway to get what we really want. And we end up with these, the whale shark filter fish type where we're picking up plankton and when we should be going and getting the big tuna.
No, Jonty, that's not fair, my guy. Like, if you look at the last 2 years at least, if you look at the kind of deals that they made, Ben White, Ramsdale, Saliba, Tomiyasu, Erdegaard, which was an absolute steal. How did they get that guy? Okay, Saka was there already. Jesus, Zinchenko, Martinelli a couple of years ago as well. So they have different. I think Edu and them more hits than misses, but the misses have been some huge misses. Like never forget that Willian and David Luiz came in under these men. Never forget that. Those were huge, colossal, not just flops, but like spiritual flops. Like it literally, it sucked the life out of the club. And I just hope that in a player as depressing as I find Kai Havertz, because I find him incredibly depressing, that we won't be doing the same kind of thing.
No, you're right, man. He's got a face like a slap 24/7. Like even when he scores, he doesn't actually look happy. It looks like he's like celebrating through gritted teeth. So when I watch him play, I don't see how he fits in with, because I have to be honest, man. Yeah, there are reasons why I should probably hate on Arsenal quite a lot, but I don't hate on this team though. The Arsenal current team is a very likable team, but it does have dotted with some shithousery and some grit and determination in there that I quite like. I quite admire. I think is a good team, and I think that I agree with Lincoln. The general strategy I think has banged. At least 75 to 80% of your transfers have banged. They've gone incredibly well. When I think of Ramsdale and White, I was there bantering you guys, thinking, "What the f*** are you doing? This guy's got Maguire level relegations." Yeah, Ramsdale, he's shocking. He's looked terrible, but I back the whatever they call the transfer observatory guys who say that he's the goalkeeper in world football with the highest value, because he's been phenomenal. And I think it's not even a discussion whether he's the best England goalie, which we'll get to the next transfer subject in a bit. But I think the L's that you've taken have been few and far between. But like Lincoln said, they've been big ones, and they're ones that have really effed your team up structurally, like the culture. I just think they were bad signings. And I hope that the Havertz one, from a rival perspective, I hope it happens, because I don't think he's going to add much to you guys, and it sucks money away from getting a Caicedo or someone else who would help your team a lot. But you never know. I think you guys are right. You can't really predict why managers like Arteta and Pep are doing things. You kind of have to wait and catch up when you see it later on.
Yeah.
And you have to pray and hope that this transfer is one of those ones, because on the face of it, it looks like an absolute stinker.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say on this point was just, I agree with you guys, right? And I think there's a common theme among our bad signings, that they tend to be in garbage time of transfer windows. Like right at the end of a transfer window, we haven't got who we wanted, and we end up with someone that nobody wants. And maybe that makes me feel a little bit better about the Havertz thing, that it's really early in the transfer window. So there's got to be a plan here. He shouldn't be desperate yet, right? There's still players out there. There's still a lot of things. So maybe that gives me a little bit more confidence that he's actually thought this through, and this is something he truly wants. But I just hope it's not the whole settling for not our second or third or fourth choice, because that's where we've tended to not do so well, outside of last January, where obviously we still ended up doing quite well despite not getting our first choice. But I hope that there's some strategy here, and it's June 18th. I mean, there's got to be some strategy to this, surely.
Also, I just want to and you don't buy strikers from Chelsea, fam. That's never a good look. Like, since Costa, that's one of the heaviest shirts in the world. Like, you've seen Werner go there. You've seen Havertz. You've seen they bought 5 of the same kind of player. All of them better than the last. Werner was so bad. Like, that guy broke the expected goals model. There's never. I remember this. There was an article or something that came out, said that the guy that drew up the expected goals model had to go back and go and reconsider, just because Werner was so bad. No one had ever seen anything like it. And now you got Havertz coming in, when what Arsenal really need is just someone, just a cool, calm, just a killer, just like The Last of Us, like your man Joel, just show up, just kill it. 20 goals a season, ice in his veins. Everyone he knows and loves has died, and he's just living in the apocalypse, just making a living. That's what we need. Just a killer up front, not a nice guy you're hanging around and have a couple of neck oils with him. Not one of those. And we're not getting that with Havertz. So you know what's weird is I started this, I was emotional. And then I was like, yeah. And then the more I think about it, the worse it gets. The worse this idea is.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, on that note, I think speaking of confusing transfers, or speaking of not getting your first choice, I think this is a perfect time to move on to Man United and old T-Rex arms. So, I mean, I don't know if the listeners out there have heard, but apparently Man United are now linked to England's number one himself. Little arms, XL in the body, XS on the arms, Jordan Pickford. What do you reckon of that, and how happy would you be to see old slick back Brill Cream in your team, mate?
What an intro. What an intro. I'm speechless, because I know we need a goalie, but what I really want to understand, right, is if we go back to stats, right, Lincoln just brought up expected goals, right? A goalie that we know is horse is Kepa, and he's got one of the highest, for some reason, right, I heard this on multiple different pieces of content I watched recently. In most goalkeeping metrics, Kepa is the top performing goalie in the league. But our eyes tell us that he's absolutely bullshit. Like, we watch him play, and he lets in goals from outside the box. He doesn't actually it doesn't look like he fills his defenders with any confidence. And to be quite honest, Chelsea have been abysmal. I know it's not purely on their defence, like Lincoln just mentioned, their attack has been terrible. But they are looking to upgrade their goalie position with a terrible goal, with the fact they've got a bad goalie. And when I look at a lot of those metrics, the goalies who perform quite poorly on them are generally always Lloris, De Gea, and Jordan Pickford. We've got one of those goalies right now, and if we're going to let him go, surely it's to try and find a progressive goalie who you'd imagine would, somehow be higher up on the actual metrics that matter, the ones where you see Alisson, Ramsdale this past season, Nick Pope this past season, the ones that actually show whether a goalie's been playing really well, along with the eye test. And Jordan Pickford just ain't that. And Jordan Pickford and the goalkeeping position, when you think about in the the national team, alongside centre back, the position that Maguire plays, are the two where I think we all universally think there's quite a few better players in that position. So if I think about the goalie, I don't think Jordan Pickford's even the second best England goalie. I think he might be the third best goalie, and I say might. So I think definitely Rambo's better than him. Ramsdale's a much better goalie than Pickford in everything, including distribution. Because I think the reason, and I'm hoping and praying, the reason why we're linked to Pickford is because everyone has put two and two together and thinking we want a goalie who's decent with his feet and will be able to distribute and is decent at kind of sweeper keeping, which probably is about the only thing that Pickford does at above average level. Everything else he does is below average. Like, he's not a good shot stopper. I think a lot of it is this like Joe Hart emotional hype, and the fact that he's a northern lad and he's made he's a bit of a shithouse and whatever, which is probably also another thing that he brings that is a positive. But when I look at the goalies on the market for 45 million, which I think is the touted fee, I could name you at least 3 or 4 goalies who I think would be a much better shout for us to get. And I don't believe we have problems around homegrown quotas and stuff like that would lead us to look for only an English goalie. So I'm really struggling to see the logic behind it, because if I think about the goalies available and we're choosing to let David De Gea go, or we're not fighting to keep him as much is the rumor. How you land on Pickford, I'm really confused and baffled by it, because for 45 million, I can name those goalies. I think Onana in the Champions League final showed you exactly why you might want to go for him at Inter. And we've got the Ten Hag hype because he played for Ajax. So it would be a goalie who understands the system and has got a bit of a bond with the manager already. You've got Diogo Costa at Porto, young goalie, high ceiling. You're going to pay around the same fee. And his stats when it comes to, again, sweeper keeping, the actual stats that matter, he's high up on all of them for a goalie in Europe. I mean, I'd even probably take I mean, I wouldn't take, but he's a long shot. Mike Maignan in AC Milan on the other side of the of Milan would be a great goalie to get as well. I think that semi final between Inter and AC, the only thing that was of high quality was the goalkeeping. The rest of the match was just like it was a really boring semi final for a Champions League encounter, but. Yeah, I'm just rambling because it's actually thrown me completely. Seeing those rumors recently, it doesn't make sense. Normally, like you guys, you can try and hope that your manager's got like a bit of a crazy professor, mad scientist streak, and he's seeing something that you don't. But with a goalie quite evidently as as Pickford, I just struggle. I'm really struggling. Like Lincoln, maybe you can shed some light on this, but I can't see how you're not going to break out into another bum rant about Pickford. It's got to be something similar, surely.
Nah, I'll tell you what. I've seen him do well for England in certain situations. However, not enough, I guess, to kind of see where you're coming from with this. I just want to go back to something that you said before, and it's actually about goalkeeping stats. Excuse me. I find goalkeeping stats to be some of the more interesting stats in football because it's really difficult to measure quality of shots, when those the kind of game, as in like the pressure of the game when they're coming in. And so, for example, Kepa is not a good goalkeeper. We all agree. But as you say, the stats actually put him quite high. And I think you'll find Lloris to be quite a good goalkeeper as well, even though we all know he's got clangers in him. And when he does make a mistake, it tends to be in the most important games. And so goalkeeping, more than any other position on the field, is such a vibes-based thing. It's just that do you feel safe with this guy? If this guy's your keeper, do you feel like if you have to drive home, do you feel safe with this guy? And if you don't feel safe with Pickford, the fans, the players, the coach, if they don't feel safe with him, it's a terrible signing. Because what's going to happen? He's going to show up. He's going to concede a goal that he maybe shouldn't concede in the first couple of games for United, and the Stratford Inn's going to get on top of him. It's such a weird way to go for them. And then I think you're 100% right as well. Like he's the third best guy. I mean, Pope probably better than him as well. It is a difficult position to fill. I wouldn't say that he's exceptionally good with his feet at all. I don't see. Also, excuse me, this is another thing that I don't know why English goalkeepers are like this. I like Ramsdale. I think he's really good. I think he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I would take it if he's a little bit less hype. If it's just like more kind of cool and calm. Because if you look at the best goalkeepers in the world, that's what they're like. If you look at Alisson and Edison, Courtois to a lesser extent, these are guys who are just kind of just do the saves, get on with it. They don't scream. They don't get into banter with the fans or whatever. And I don't know if you want that from Pickford. I really don't think. I think Onana would be a great signing, and that's obviously who everyone is looking at. But yeah, I don't see it at all.
Now you're right though, man, because I think goalies, and I was a goalie, so when I was younger for a large chunk of my childhood, so I can vouch for this. You kind of need to be a weird person, but not weird in like get overly hyped. Like I feel like the goalies you just mentioned are a bit more like how I want my midfielders. Like someone who's going to get the crowd going and be a bit of kind of a bit of a passion merchant. And I think that is a worrying thing, and it's a worrying trait that all the goalies in England seem to have for the most part, except Pope. I guess Pope probably fits the characteristics of what you want in a goalie in terms of being kind of strange, a bit geeky, a bit quiet, a little bit like kind of like you'd find him in a room in the darkness by himself, just sitting in a corner. Like he wouldn't be out at the pub down in neck oils, like you said. But I can see Pickford doing that. He's been famous for doing that. You can see Rambo going out on the lash with all the lads and doing all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if I want that on my goalie. And there are goalies out there, like you said, who give me that kind of that desirable trait in a goalie where they either look like they're an absolute weirdo, but like kind of in a silent murderer kind of vibe, or they're just like super cool and deadpan. And that's what you want from a goalie. I think of one of our best goalies we had, Edwin van der Sar, and I think that was one of his biggest benefits or like plus points was that you didn't know how he felt ever. Like he just looked concentrated in the zone, cool as a cucumber, wasn't really perturbed by anything, and was super, super chill. And I think it was what we needed at the time. And I think the modern game has gone down that kind of, you need a goalie like that. More chill and lower key and strange and weird and less kind of Peter Schmeichel kind of vibes where he was, a bit all in your face, kind of all action goalie, which I think in times gone by has worked. But I don't think the modern game suits it, man.
Yeah, and I mean, this Emi Martinez is still around, and he just won a World Cup for Argentina, so that it's not an exclusively English thing, but it does seem like English goalkeepers do tend in that direction, the kind of blood and guts kind of stuff. And I don't think and that's also why on the continent English goalkeepers are like not rated at all. It's like one of those things that they don't take English goalkeepers particularly seriously. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Jonty?
I mean, I couldn't agree with you guys more. I think the way that Lincoln, you described a striker, like a killer, he lost all of his family. He's got nothing to live for apart from goalkeeping. Those are the type of dons you want in goal. Like they're not outspoken, but you don't want to get on the bad side of them. They're kind of them weird, as you say, the weird guys that have got really nothing to lose. Because if you think about it, out of all of the positions on a field, I feel like goalkeeping is a very mental one, right? Like it's a lot about confidence. You don't get a lot of looks at the ball. You don't get too many shots. It really comes down to a very short or small number of chances that you've got to perform at, right? You think about like all of the competitions that we saw back end of the season. Pretty much everything was going to penalties, right? And think about how often keepers and players just kind of break down in those moments. And I feel like, to me, Jordan Pickford is a hothead. And I feel like that can work in his favour in certain circumstances, right? And I actually think at Man United, it could work in his favour more often than not, because you guys more often than not are the big dogs, the front runners. When you're playing against certain teams, they come against you and feel a little bit, overshadowed. They feel like the underdogs type of thing. And that's where a goalkeeper like Pickford or Emi Martinez getting in your face and doing this, that, and the other to you can actually work sometimes. I can get in your head. I'm thinking of when you guys played Brighton in the FA Cup, right? That's where I actually feel like maybe him and like the opposite of De Gea, because De Gea is like so inward. He seems not like he's got no confidence. He just seems like he wants a pat on the back all the time. And maybe Pickford actually could come in and do a job for you in that sense, that he'll be the exact opposite of that. He'll be coming in, talking way more than he should, giving it the big one to everyone. Maybe that will take some heat off the rest of your defenders and give them a chance to just focus on defending. But at the same time, he's got a clanger in him. He's definitely got a clanger in him. I just feel like maybe he's the right kind of goalkeeper to deal with your fans and to deal with the fan base that is going to be getting on him all the time and that.
But that's the thing, like, if those strikers, like the perfect striker is someone who plays like he doesn't have a family. Pickford plays like someone's holding his family hostage. Like he just does too much. He's coming out and flapping at balls and screaming at people. He's trying to beat this hostage negotiation on the field. And I think that, to me, that stresses me out. And if it stresses me out, I wonder if it doesn't stress the centre backs out. And God bless them. I haven't got the best centre backs at the moment. Like, I think it's probably a fit. It's a fit, like, culturally, I guess. But like, come on, man, this can't have been the plan for Ten Hag. You have this progressive manager to come in, and then you end up with Pickford. Come on.
The other added benefit he's got is that he hates Liverpool. So that would fit in quite well with your fan base and team, right?
I
He bloody hates
don't
Liverpool.
don't get me wrong. Right now I'm trying to tally up in my mind all the for Pickford plus points and against Pickford negative points, and one of the only ones I have on the plus side is that he's played for Everton and he hates Liverpool probably just as much as we do. So that's a lot of points on his side. But as an actual player, like Lincoln said, I think there's a hype on him with his feet, which started, I think, when, before Ramsdale had come out and before you had a few more goalies that were decent with their feet. I feel like it was a overhype. Because he wasn't actually just, hoofing it up, and he actually could kick the ball with a bit of fade here and there. And people got on the Pickford's great with his feet hype. I don't actually think he's that good with his feet. And then I think he's a type of goalie who needs to face quite a few shots to actually, perform well. I don't know if he's the type of goalie that would be able to cope with, for the reason Lincoln just said, with not seeing the ball that much or kind of playing for a higher end team who's not maybe going to face as many shots, and he won't be as busy as maybe as he has been at Everton. And that scares me, because that does make me think what Lincoln said is going to happen. And that he's the worst games I've seen of Pickford is when he's kind of trying to insert himself more into the game than he needs to be. If he can just chill and hold back and learn that he just needs to, save the shots when they come and not go looking for trouble, then maybe he could be a semi-decent goalie. But I think that goes against his nature. I think he is someone, like Lincoln said, who acts like his house is on fire 24/7 and is just running around mad. And you'd have to change his whole personality to get him to kind of rein it in. And I think at his age, I don't know. We talked about De Gea not being, at a stage in his career where he can learn how to be better with his feet or to be more domineering of his box and learn these skills. Can Jordan Pickford learn to do everything opposite than he's been doing for his whole career at 28? I don't think so.
I mean, that's a really good question as well. And like if I think about Jordan Pickford, if I don't know what the picture you guys have, but the thought in my mind that comes up the most when I think about Pickford is there was that one Merseyside derby, and I think it was behind closed doors, and it's the one where there should have been a pin. This is an insane thing that happened. Is he ran out and 5 foot off the floor, gave a man the Mortal Kombat Liu Kang kick, went straight through Van Dijk's ACL. Honestly, I thought he should have been banned for that. Disgraceful to rob the world of prime Van Dijk when the guy was at his absolute peak. The cultural terrorism involved in this is just beyond words for me. But that's in my mind. That's what he does. Is he'll come out, he'll fly halfway off the ground, and he'll take someone out. Should have been a pen, should have been sent off. But that's what I think about most when I think about Pickford in terms of what he does. And then everyone around him, and everyone's like, oh no, it's good, passion, blah 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 blah. But when no, it's completely reckless. It's out of control. And I don't know if that's something that you actually want at Old Trafford.
Yeah. I mean, with him and Casemiro in that team, there's a lot of red cards to be had, mate. You're going to be paying a lot of money to the FA with the two of them in your team.
Shout out to Casemiro, Mike. Casemiro pulling the new shot. He's the new Shaka, baby. It's good. I love to see it. My man's getting more. He never got a red his entire life. He's got 3 already.
No, I love Casemiro, but you're right, man. I think, yeah, I just the only thing I can think of is we've worked down the goalie target list, and that's the easiest of the deals that we have on that list to get done. Because what I've read anyway is that the Onana deal is there. You could get him from Inter for around 40-45 million. Inter still need money. He's worked with Ten Hag. I think that for me, it just seems like I'm praying and hoping this is some xenophobic English media shit where they really want a British goalie to be the goalie at Man United, the biggest team in the country or whatever, and they're trying to insert him into the conversation. That's what I'm praying and hoping for. And I think there's, credence to that. Our media love doing that. But That's what I'm praying for at the moment. I'm praying that this is all some sort of elusive. You know that year we got Lukaku and all the rumors we were trying to get Alvaro Morata, and then we just got Lukaku out of nowhere. I'm praying with everything that this is a smokescreen and that we're just going to announce an honor, 2 or 3 weeks after all of this happens, and we go for another goalie, Diogo Costa or whatever, and that this is all to just kind of maybe take people off the scent. But yeah, if it does happen, I guess I'll have to get behind him. But I think that the comparisons to Emi Martinez is there, but I actually think Emi Martinez is a better shot stopper and just an overall better goalie. So I feel like his kind of shithousery is something that he's it's almost become his USP, because he was kind of a bit of a boring, standard, decent goalie before that. He was quite good at shot stopping, not too bad with his feet, quite commanding, quite big. But I never thought he was outstanding at anything. And then, the housery's been sprinkled on top to kind of make him look, I guess, like a bit more of a top class goalie. But I think he's better than Pickford. So I discussed this with Johns. Like, the housery levels might be too much if we got Emi Martinez, but I'd take him over Pickford. I think he's just a better goalie. And I think he's proven that he's got cojones, as Troy Deeney says, in big moments. So I don't think you could say that of Pickford. It's kind of all bark, no bite yet. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Very interesting.
It certainly is, and I'm sure it won't be the last we hear of it. All right, well, I think that's probably enough for today. We've had a really, really good discussion here now with Lincoln. I think, on this podcast, we have a special question we like to ask all of our guests, and that is, who is your favorite East or Southeast Asian footballer of all time? It can be living or currently playing or from history. Anyone you like, and why?
Man, it would have to be my man Nakamura. So much so that I actually don't even know his name. I only know, and I'll tell you why. I think it's Shinsuke, right? Shinsuke Nakamura? No. That's a wrestler, isn't it?
No, that's right.
There's a wrestler called Shinsuke
yeah.
Nakamura. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. Anyway, I'll look it up anyway. Because on ISS2, before it became Pro Evo, it used to be called ISS. Or in different parts of the world, it was called ISS. And my man was just lights out with the free kicks. And that, from there, like, started following a bit. So, this guy can ball. And from there, that's my favorite.
That's an interesting one, because that's the exact answer I gave, right? Is that I just remember him from Pro Evo and the fact that he had his own like free kick style, and they only gave it to certain people like Beckham, Janino, him, Ronaldinho, them type of people.
Man, Janino on Pro Evo was something else. That was like 99. Exactly. It was like Adriano a few games later. It was amazing.
Yeah, no, he was, and I mean, again, I didn't watch Celtic very much, but I do remember him in like some Champions League games and against Man United doing bits. So I think it was it was a little bit of the video game, and then a little bit of what we saw in the Champions League of, again, that unbelievable free kick techers.
It was the culture, though, wasn't it? When we talk about the game, and like that was our introduction to him as a player, I guess, through like seeing him on TV in the Champions League nights. I think back then Champions League was on ITV and on terrestrial, so everyone got a chance to watch it here in the UK. And so you got a glimpse of seeing him, and then obviously playing video games, growing up on video games. PES or ISS back then was the game. There was no FIFA chat. FIFA wasn't about. It wasn't the game that was popping off at that time properly. It was all about PES or ISS. So Nakamura's I reckon we're going to get that answer a lot with all our guests, because he's just a silky Don, wasn't he? But I'm interested, because why are none of you Arsenal guys saying Inamoto? He was out here, blonde hair, doing that whole Rush Hour 2 villain arc looking vibes. Was he not cutting the mustard for you guys?
It was a dark time. I don't know. I actually, to the extent that I'm like, did this guy even play for us? I feel like Anthony's making up a player.
that's my exact point, is that he wasn't like a regular starter in our team for an extended period of time. So, I mean, like when we asked you the question, you said Park Ji-sung, and I can see that because he was like a fixture in your team for ages. He did bits at PSV. There's a lot of memory to pull from when you talk about him. And I don't know about you, Lincoln, but I spent a lot of hours on PES. So I've got a lot of memory of Nakamura slapping in free kicks. But Inamoto, I didn't really see him that much in our team.
No, I got nothing for him. I'll tell you who was also one of my most hated Asian footballers, and that's that man, Son. Hate that guy. But I think it's very funny that South Korea almost made him do military service. I think that's really funny. I think it's really funny. My man had to beat the case on the field. I think that's so funny. And
you're right though. That's one of the funniest. That's one of the funniest like football. I don't know if what you'd call it, like challenges where like an FA just says to you, "Yo, if you guys can win a gold medal, you don't have to do military service." I don't know another country that has some weird clauses / challenges for their players like that. It's got to be one of a kind.
It's not football, but I know in Singapore, where they have compulsory military service, they had an Olympian at one point who was doing really well, and but his career was going to get cut short. But luckily, my man won the gold medal, their first and only gold medal up until this point. And I rate it, man. You got to beat the court. You got to beat the case on the court. That's the only place to beat it.
My question is, did Ji-sung Park have all this as well? Because compulsory service has been there for ages. Did he just do it when he was at PSV or something? Like, why did he never have to talk about that? Because he defo didn't win a World Cup or anything, or the Asian Games, I don't think. So why did he have to go? Could have saved Arsenal some heartache, mate.
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. It's all of these rules. You'll know that, obviously, with our background, didn't it, Johnson? Taiwan, they changed the rules a lot about military service. So I remember when that Asian Games was coming about, I think originally the rule wasn't based on the Asian Games, and I think it was on like the Olympics, or there were other criteria that were like the bar was a bit higher. But I think they kind of modified it because they really wanted to win the Asian Games and the Asian Cup, or whatever it's called. They're like Continental Cup. So they I think they pretty much freestyle it, or kind of give them different targets depending on the time period. Because I don't remember Ji-sung Park, and you remember that left back for Spurs, Lee Pyong-yo?
Yeah,
or Lee Young-pyo. I think he didn't have that either. So it's an interesting one. I think Lincoln's right. They probably just like put it in front of him and be like, "Yo, if you can do this, you're free." But yeah, no.
It feels like Hunger Games, not Asian Games, mate. It's like he's given a challenge and he's got to get out of the jungle.
Yeah. Who's that Don? I think he's at Wolves now. The Asian Don is at Wolves.
Yeah, Hwang Hee-chan. Yeah. Hwang Hee-chan. Yeah, he's decent as well.
He's decent. Yeah.
I think he was. I
think he was on that same team with Son that won the Asian Games, that got freed from his military service. So he's but yeah, let's see, because interesting Son, we can talk about this, Johnson, on another pod, but the Saudi league trying to buy all the players, apparently they chucked a big offer in for him for Heung-min Son a couple of days ago. So maybe he won't be in the Prem for too much longer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if Daniel Levy's got anything to say about it, he's gone today. But that would be a shame, though. I think we definitely can talk about it on another pod. But he would be probably, of all the ones I've heard so far, the most in his prime. I mean, outside of Ruben Neves, but yeah, that's all I've really seen. But anyway, again, thank you very much, Ant and Lincoln, and for any of our listeners that are, listening on Spotify or Apple Music or Google Podcasts, please do give us a follow and a 5-star review if you can. We very much would appreciate it. And if you're watching us on YouTube, again, like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you disagree with anything that we've said. I think there could be a couple of things you might want to disagree with this time, as usual. So please let us know down below. And again, Ant, Lincoln, thank you very much for coming on the pod, mate.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks so much.
This podcast podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.